You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. Man, what a night. What a night in Tiger Stadium. We sat here on Friday and told you go make a memory. And it was one certainly that everybody who was there, or even if you weren't, wherever you were watching, however you were watching, it's one we'll talk about forever. It's right up there with, if you want to talk about Cannon's run or the night the clock stopped or the earthquake game or 97 against Florida, name it. 03 against Georgia, 07 against Florida, name it. You want to talk about the best wins in the history of that stadium, that's one that everyone's going to talk about forever. And I was thinking about this after the win and throughout the course of the weekend. My mind kept going back to the idea of, you know why Brian Kelly took the LSU job. Y'all, Brian Kelly's best teams at Notre Dame, his best teams, lost 42-14 and 31-14 to Alabama. What might be possibly his least talented team at LSU just beat Alabama in year one. It's not, believe me, that is not a knock on this team. What they are doing is incredible. But it's easy to see when you look at Brian Kelly, had to remake this roster, transfer portal. You start stacking top 5 recruiting classes on top of each other, and this roster is only going to get stronger. But in year one, with a roster full of transfers and holdovers from the previous staff, they got it done. And y'all, this win, it's not a flex on Notre Dame. Please don't misunderstand me. That's not the whole point of it. It's not pointing and laughing at them. I don't care about them. But it's a reminder of what LSU should be. When you marry elite coaching with elite resources, that's what you should expect. That's the expectation at LSU. My goodness, how awesome was that to watch unfold on Saturday night? A couple of the takeaways from the game itself. Golly, we talked about where Alabama was vulnerable. And the line of scrimmage was certainly part of it. Alabama on the defensive line, boy, those edge rushers are magnificent. And we've talked a lot about those guys. Will Anderson, Dallas Turner, they're awesome. But last week we talked so much about there not being a Jonathan Allen, an A'Shawn Robinson, a Jerron Reed, those guys that had really been the dominant force in this series over the years. Didn't look like they were there. There was never a more glaring example of the disparity on the line of scrimmage than 2015. LSU went to Tuscaloosa with Leonard Fournette, who was the runaway Heisman front. I mean, it was locked up. The Heisman was locked up. LSU goes to Tuscaloosa, and Fournette carries 19 times for 31 yards. And in that same game, Derrick Henry ran 38 times for 210. What you expected LSU to do, Bama did. It flipped completely. That was the series for a decade. On Saturday, LSU ran for 185 yards. By the way, sack-adjusted 200 yards. Because college football still stupidly counts sack yardage against your rushing total, whatever. LSU ran for 200 yards in the game. Bama ran for 137. You outrushed them. Your defensive front, 2 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 6 passes defended, 10 quarterback hurries. Do you want to know why Bryce Young completed fewer than 50% of his passes? 2 reasons. Number 1, his receiving talent isn't now what it has been, something we talked about all throughout last week. And the other part of it is LSU's defensive front was active and disruptive and pushed around Alabama's defensive front. There was a play right before halftime when Bama kicked the field goal before half, the second down play after the fumble controversy. Mekhi Wingo was playing end and pushed the offensive lineman into Bryce Young to force the incompletion. LSU was better at the line of scrimmage than Alabama on Saturday. So many angles we could talk about. Field position. Y'all realize the best Alabama field position the entire game was the 35-yard line? Hang on, I got it charted. Alabama's starting field position the entire game. Their own 20, their own 9, their own 11, their own 10, their own 25, their own 19. In the second half, their own 25, their own 25, their own 24, 35 after the kickoff out of bounds, and their own 25. Their best starting field position of the game was after LSU kicked the ball out of bounds. As much maligned as special teams has been, as bad as LSU has been on special teams, they were excellent, including Jay Bramblett, especially Jay Bramblett in that first half, who kept making Alabama drive the length of the field. And time and again, LSU made plays defensively to put Alabama behind the sticks or to snuff out drives and ultimately hold that offense down for the bulk of 3 quarters. But I would say the most impressive thing, and this is another reason why, it's a reason why LSU won on Saturday. It's a reason why they're sitting there right now at 7-2 on the season and 5-1 in conference play, and a reason why I'm not worried about LSU going to Arkansas this week. This team has an incredible ability to flush it, to not let what happened before dictate what will happen ahead. We all know they were down 14 to Florida State, rallied. They were down 13 to Mississippi State, rallied. They were down 17 to Auburn, rallied. They were down 17 to 3 Ole Miss, rallied. A lot of touchdown on the second play of the game to Florida, rallied. Like, we all know it. In that game on Saturday, do you realize, you probably do, but I'm going to say it out loud, every time Alabama scored in the second half, every time, LSU responded with points to retake the lead. Alabama kicked a field goal on its first possession of the second half to go up 9-7. LSU responded with a touchdown drive. When Alabama scored to go up 15-14, LSU responded with a field goal drive to go up 17-15. When Bryce Young had his oop-a-de-oop run around, deep ball touchdown for 41 yards, and Bama went up 21-17 with 4:44 to play in the ball game, LSU responded with a touchdown drive. That was the Mason Taylor touchdown in the corner of the end zone. And then, of course, in overtime, Bama scored first, and LSU answered. Alabama did not run a single play offensively, not one play offensively the entire game with the lead. They had the lead, but every single time they took a lead, LSU answered right back and took it away. This team's ability to just not let negative circumstances affect them is marvelous. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know how that happens. I don't know if it's something intangible that these particular group of guys possess, or if it's something that Brian Kelly has pounded into them. Whatever it is, the message has stuck, and this group, it has resonated because they are fantastic. And they just never seem to get bothered when things aren't going well. The end of the first half, Bama's trying to go back-to-back scores. You think you're off the field with a fumble. A technicality of an awful rule gives Alabama another chance, and you go boom, 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 right back off the field, make them kick a field goal. So you go to half with the lead. It's incredible to watch. And y'all, it's amazing. Because the conversation we're going to have right now about LSU this week and for the month of November is dramatic. Y'all, after LSU beat Ole Miss, someone asked, hey, is Jaden Daniels in the Heisman race? We did a whole segment on it here. We looked at what would have to happen, what his number. We dissected the whole thing. After the Ole Miss game, again, after the Ole Miss game, not before, after. They had blown out Florida. They had beaten Ole Miss, back-to-back games. He had accounted for 11 touchdowns. He was like, boom. Jaden Daniels' Heisman odds were plus 15,000 at DraftKings. Plus 15,000. Today they're plus 1,800, and only 7 players have better Heisman odds than Jaden Daniels. And if you want to win that thing, you better be playing on that first Saturday in December and have a great game. And he's going to have an opportunity to do it. I don't know if he will, but he's going to have an opportunity to do it. LSU's odds of winning the West are right now at 87.7%. Their odds of winning the SEC championship are 17.1%. Odds of making the playoff are 5%. Basically, they're thinking LSU's going to Atlanta, but not going to beat Georgia. Give this team another month to get better and better and better. It's why playoffs are so important. Teams are allowed to improve. And there is no better embodiment of that than this team. From where they were week 1 against Florida State to where they are now is almost unfathomable how different the teams are. And that is a major hat tip to Brian Kelly for the job he and his staff have done at learning their squad, putting them in the right positions to be successful, to give them an opportunity to play for something meaningful here in November and into December. And Saturday was an amazing backdrop for that amazing canvas for that painting to be drawn, and how beautiful it was. I asked Brian Kelly today on Monday if Saturday night was the best win of his career. Here's what he said.
The biggest win of my career is going to be when we win a national championship. And so I'm focused on one thing when I came down here, and that's to win championships. That's one game. It was an exciting win, but I don't put it in the category of the biggest.
A dude who is not in any way content with what happened on Saturday, because the reason he took this job was singular. It wasn't the money. He could have made a ton of money at Notre Dame forever, as long as he wanted to. He came here for one reason: to win a national championship. That's it. He was never going to do it at Notre Dame because he didn't have the resources to do it. LSU is giving him every resource he needs, and he has put LSU in that conversation far more quickly than anyone, yours truly included, could have even dreamed. It's going to make for a really fun November. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.